Good evening, Agile acquisition enthusiasts. As you may have noticed, no longer in the underground digital tiki bar. It is no more. The basement's been renovated, and I have been elevated. I've got a promotion in the house. I've moved up a floor, and so this is my office. So this is where I'll be coming to you for most of these videos. New year, new you. What can you say? And with that, I'm going to get back to making these videos regularly. So please stay tuned, subscribe if you haven't already. And tonight, I want to talk to you about proposal response, because that's a really important topic if you want to be in the game of government business. But first, cheers. First, I want to say responding to government RFPs or RFQs is no small undertaking. It is not for the faint of heart. They are big, gnarly requirement packages, and you've got to be organized if you want to be successful. So tonight, I'm going to give you my number one tip for responding to government proposals, and that's to create a requirements matrix. And the reason for that is there's a lot of requirements in the package from the government, and they tend to be in different documents. And if you do not hit every single one of those, you're out of there. So when I think of requirements matrices, I think of it in two components. You have your contractual requirements. These are the things that the government will check as soon as they get your package and see if you're compliant. If you're not compliant, game over, all that work for nothing. So you got to get those right. The second part of that is the technical requirements. That's a little bit squishier because generally you're going to have a lot of pages of requirements, and you're going to have a fixed number of pages you can respond to. So you have to find a way to address all of what I call the shall statements, or the key technical requirements of the document, in a format that is clear, that you understand them, that you're addressing them, but also that stays within that page count. Because if you exceed the page count, anything over that page count isn't considered. So one rule of thumb to keep in mind is that late is late in government responses. So if you're 1 minute late, you're gone. You don't get considered. And nowadays, it's mostly technical. It used to be you had to show up with lots of boxes of binders, multiple copies. Thankfully, the government, for the most part, has moved on to technical acceptance. The downside of that is a lot of times you have to respond through a technical or through a government portal. And government portals tend to struggle under a lot of people accessing them at the same time. So if everybody's responding at 12 o'clock on Friday, the 15th, know that portal is going to be overloaded, and there's a good chance you're not going to get your proposal in. So I always try to set the expectation to submit 24 hours in advance of that end date. That puts a little extra pressure on the team because every day matters when you're responding to proposals. But taking that extra day to get that in allows for two things. One, to make sure you will get it in on time, no question. And two, if something were to come up last minute, you have some time to make adjustments. So it's really important to build in that extra time for you. So how do you think about proposal response? Well, like I said, you start with the requirements matrix, you comb through that document, you pull all your shall statements, you pull all of your compliance statements, and you put them in there, and then you track across. It says in this paragraph, this is what we have to do. Here's where in our response we address that. And you got to have green checks all the way on that requirements matrix to know that you're good to go. Usually you want to set that up before you do your kickoff. You also want to establish your win themes, make sure you know what it is that sets your company apart that's going to make a difference and get you across that finish line. And then as you're writing your document, remember, pictures say 1,000 words, so use graphics smartly. Don't waste space with useless graphics or promotional marketing type graphics. Make sure every graphic is there to communicate a very clear message why the government should select you, what sets you apart. And again, that should all tie back to your win themes. I also like to use call out boxes that will draw the government's attention, because you got to understand the government evaluators, and I've been one many times. They have to read a lot of proposals. It's a lot of pages. At some point, it starts to become a little bit of white noise. And if you want to make sure that as they're reading your document, their eyes getting drawn to the things that are differentiators for your company. So again, you want to tie those to get back to your matrix and your win themes. Make sure it's very well organized, and communication in the team is key. So make sure there's a group. Again, back in physical world, when everybody was in the same space, sometimes you'd have a war room, you have documents pasted to the wall. In the virtual world, you got to have an environment where you can collaborate, and a way in which you can work on documents where you can have version control. So critical. Nothing worse than somebody going in, making a bunch of changes, and then not being able to pull those back or identify what's actually changed as you're moving through your review process. As I mentioned, review process, Very important to lay that out so everybody who's involved has clear expectations of what their responsibility is in the proposal process and when they're expected to do it. So you want to get that on the calendar early and up front, go over it during the kickoff review, and make sure people understand if they're a writer or a contributor or they're a reviewer and what their responsibilities are at each of your different stages before you get that proposal done and ready to submit it. A last little word to my editor friends. Editing takes time. It's the thing that people think about the least, but it does take a lot of time to get a proposal to sound like one voice when you have a lot of contributors, and to make sure, just grammar and it reads well. So don't assume that you have up until that submission timeline for the company that writing can continue up to that point. You got to snap a really hard line, lock the document down, and say we're done, and it's over in editing and cleanup and what some people call white glove review, and get that document formalized and finalized, ready to submit. So there you have it. That's my suggestions for responding to government proposals. Not an easy undertaking, but it's worth it. It's worth it for the mission. It's worth it for the business. But you just have to have the right team in place and the right processes. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe. I'm going to get back to making these videos regularly, so I look forward to engaging with the community. Until next week, cheers.